So with that said, let's take a look at number 10. We have artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence, or AI, is progressing really fast. And scientists, they actually estimate that there is a 50% chance of AI being able to perform most human tasks as well as humans, or if not better, by the year 2050. Now, a big concern is that they will become too good at their jobs. Like, for example, if you ask a car with AI to take you to the mall as fast as possible, it might get you there being chased by cops, covered up with coffee and vomit, all of that. Because, of course, it literally did its job, got you there as fast as possible, but it may not have necessarily been the way in which you actually wanted to go. So things like that are a huge concern. And also, it's a scary thought that AI could fall into the hands of the wrong person. Many people believe that this is literally how the world is going to end. Humans are replaced with robots. Number 9 brings us the supervolcanoes. Scientists have used certain calculations to predict and determine the eruption pattern of the planet's supervolcanoes. Now, the eruption of one of these volcanoes will literally destroy all the life on planet Earth, because it's estimated that the sunlight would actually be blocked out because of the ashes for several years. Now, among the 4 supervolcanoes that are located on Earth, the one named Yellowstone, according to calculations, can actually erupt at any time. Number 8 brings us geomagnetic reversal. So geologists observed a very drastic change in the Earth's magnetic field. Apparently it drops by 6% each century. So some believe that a geomagnetic reversal of the poles, it's completely inevitable. However, even though this theory has a lot of supporters, you can't necessarily calculate exactly when these reversals are going to happen, because reversals tend to vary from thousands of years to millions of years. It's just almost impossible to pinpoint an accurate time of when it will happen. Now, while the effects cannot actually be predicted, but what we do know is that when this point is reached, the reversal point, the planet Earth is going to be completely exposed to the charged particles sent from the sun. Another one is galactic alignment. Now, this prediction, it actually stated that at the winter solstice of December 21st, 2012, the crossing point of the ecliptic, which is the location of the solar system, will actually align with the dark center of the galaxy. So this event takes place every 36 years, but that particular one in December 21st, 2012 was supposed to be different because the sun was to appear in the front of the center of the galaxy. This alignment was supposed to cause several occurrences on Earth, like one being the Earth would be sucked into the black hole located at the center of our Milky Way galaxy. Well, obviously December 21st, 2012 happened and we're still here, but could this actually happen in the future? Solar storms are at number 6. So every 11 years, the sun experiences changes in the magnetic field, which results in solar flares and spots, which send charged particles towards the Earth. We talked about charged particles a little bit, but according to NASA, the solar storms will reach a peak. And now the Earth, though, is protected by a magnetic field, for now at least. But power grids and electric devices, they could be seriously damaged and affected. But if the Earth's magnetic field were to change somehow, it would result in these solar charges burning up the Earth.
Visible signs of deep magnetic activity that affects the whole solar system.
Number 5 brings us the worldwide pandemic. So, of course, it's easy to understand why this theory is a thing, because you can see the devastating effects of various pandemics that we've seen in recent history and in recent days. And on top of that, of course, there's various biological weapons that some countries actually have in their possession. So, I mean, any kind of misfiring of these weapons, or just any sort of biological leak of a particular virus or anything, definitely it could happen, and that's why a lot of people believe that this is how the world is going to end. Now, number 4, we're going to switch over into the world of religion for the next few. We have Kali Yuga. So the Hindu religion breaks down time into 4 distinct cycles, and the last of these cycles is going to be Kali Yuga. Now, the sacred Hindu texts claim that this age of the god Kali is actually leading to the end of humanity. This is where humans deteriorate greatly because people are going to forget about morals. And this, of course, opens up way more suffering and war and sicknesses, illnesses, diseases, viruses, all of that. and then eventually leads to the end of the world. Number 3 is Islamic eschatology. Now, the Day of Judgment is described in the religion of Islam as the end of life, and it's going to be followed by a resurrection and a judgment period. So there's multiple verses in the Quran that mention the last judgment. There's also going to be a great time of trouble described in the Islamic hadith, and the false messiah or the antichrist, aka Dajjal, will appear, and he will deceive a whole lot of people. Now, the return of Isa, or Jesus in Islam, is going to be the event that actually destroys Dajjal. And then from there, a whole lot of cataclysmic events happen. And there we have the end of the world. Now, number 2 brings us the book of Revelation from the Bible. So this is according to Christian theology. So yeah, similarly in the Bible, John's book of Apocalypse or Revelation is one of the most known books in parts of the world where Christianity is the main religion. So the book describes several events like severe plagues falling on the earth, beasts coming out of the ocean and land. And yes, there's a lot of interpretations that say that those aren't actual literal beasts that come up. But in any case, it paints a lot of different end of the world scenarios. It's probably one of the most popular end time prophecies because it states that the Messiah is going to return to save his chosen people, and then all life on the earth is going to be destroyed. There's going to also be a judgment period, and then the world is going to be created new, and the chosen people are going to live on that new world. But finally, at number 1, this one transcends religion and cultures. Most people actually believe that the world is going to end with the World War III. So there's many theorists that strongly believe that a huge global conflict that's going to start between 2 superpowers is inevitable. It's going to trigger World War III and the use of nuclear weapons, which will of course turn the planet into a complete wasteland. Now, World War III is an actual possibility, not necessarily with nations using nuclear force, but also because of several factors like lack of fresh water, economic depression, as well as limited supplies of resources like oil and other fossil fuels. So either way you put it, huge amount of chaos. So either way you look at it, there's going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of destruction, and of course that will lead to the end of the world. We have Montanism movement. Now, the Montanism movement was a 2nd century movement of Christianity, and it began in Phrygia, which is modern-day Turkey, and it's based on the visions of Montanus, who claimed to speak under the influence of the Holy Spirit. Montanists believed that the second coming of Jesus Christ was very, very, very close, and many Christians left their homes to go to a plain between the 2 villages of Pepuza and Timian, and this plain was located in Phrygia. Now, this was where Montanus claimed that the heavenly version of the city of Jerusalem would descend to earth. But of course, that never happened. Moving on to number 9, we have the Great Flood. Now, this one 100% sounds like it was taken from a page out of the Bible. Johannes Stoffler, who was a German mathematician as well as an astrologer, he made a prediction that a great flood is gonna come and destroy the world on February 25th, 1524. Now, this is when all of the known planets at the time would be in alignment under Pisces, which, if you're familiar with the zodiac signs, you'll know that Pisces is a water sign. Water, flood, see the correlation there? Now, the news of this spread like wildfire, and it created a lot of panic, and there was some light rain on the predicted flood day, but no actual flood ever happened. Moving on to number 8, we have the Great Fire of London. Yeah, speaking of spreading like wildfire, this one comes because of the Bible, and it says that 666 is related to the end of the world and the mark of the beast and all of that. So a lot of people feared that the world was going to end in 1666. Now, the Great London Fire, which lasted from September 2nd to September 6th of that year, destroyed many churches and thousands of houses. Many saw this as the fulfillment of the end of the world prophecy, but the fire was eventually extinguished and the world is still here. Number 7 is the prophet hen. This is an interesting one. Back in 1806, there was a domesticated hen in Leeds, England, and apparently this egg was laying eggs that had been inscribed with the message, "Christ is coming." So of course people are wondering like, whoa, this is amazing. And a large number of people started to come. They wanted to go and see the eggs, see the messages on the eggs, and a lot of fear started to develop because they thought Judgment Day was coming, the complete end of the world. But shortly after, it was discovered that it was the egg's owner. These were prophetic eggs, by the way, but the egg's owner actually was writing on the eggs with ink and reinserting them into the hen. Number 6 brings us Joanna Southcott. Starting at the age of 42 years old, Joanna Southcott, she reported hearing voices that predicted future events. And these predictions included the crop failures and famines of 1799 and 1800. Now, she started writing quite a few books, and she developed a large following of over 100,000 believers. Now, in the year 1813, she announced that in the following year, she would give birth to the second Messiah, whose birth would signal the last days. Now, she was 64 years old at that time, and she actually told doctors that she was a virgin. Now, the date of the birth predicted was October 19th, 1814. And it turns out that Joanna Southcott, she had a disorder that made it look like she was pregnant. No, she wasn't pregnant. No baby came. Halfway to number 5, we have Halley's Comet. Halley's Comet passes by the Earth around every 76 years, but the closeness of this comet to Earth in 1910 created a whole lot of fear that it would destroy the planet. It would either collide with Earth or poisonous gases would spill into the Earth's atmosphere and destroy human life. Now, there was a worldwide panic that followed. Of course, newspaper headlines and news coverage, they just blew this out of proportion. There was even reports of people trying to sacrifice a virgin to stop the Earth from being destroyed, as well as people started selling bottled air. Number 4 brings us True Way. Now, the Taiwanese religious leader Han Ming Chen established Chen Tao, also known as True Way, and it was a religious movement that blended various different concepts and elements of Christianity, Buddhism, UFO conspiracy theories, as well as Taiwanese folk religion. And Han Ming Chen, he preached that God would appear on US TV, specifically Channel 18, on March 25th, 1988, to announce that he would descend to the Earth the following week in a physical form which was identical to himself. Now, the following year, he also prophesied that millions of devils and spirits, together with a large flood, would result in the extinction of humankind. But no such events occurred because we're still here. Millerism comes in at number 3. Okay, so religious leader William Miller, he began to preach in 1831 that the end of the world would happen with the second coming of Jesus, also known as the Advent of Jesus. And now this was supposed to happen back in 1843. Now, when the prediction of 1843 failed, Jesus didn't come, well, he recalculated and he determined that he made a mistake and that the world would actually end in 1844. But hey, 1844 came and Jesus didn't come at that time either. And since then, that specific event has been known in Christian Adventist circles as the Great Disappointment. Now, one of his followers, Henry Emmons, he wrote this, and I quote, "I waited all Tuesday, and dear Jesus did not come. I lay prostrate for 2 days without any pain, sick with disappointment." Number 2 brings us probably our most recent one. Here we have Harold Camping. This is probably one of the most popular end time predictions that have ever happened. But these weren't just recent predictions, because Harold Camping has been prophesying the end of the world for quite some time. Harold Camping has published previously that the end of the world would happen as many as 12 times based on his interpretations of biblical knowledge and numerology and prophecies. As a matter of fact, back in the year 1992, he published a book that was titled 1994 with a question mark, which predicted the end of the world sometime around that year. And perhaps the most high-profile prediction was for May 21st, 2011. And that date he calculated to be exactly 7,000 years after the Great Flood, according to the Bible. Now, when the date passed without anything happening, he said that his math was off and he pushed back to about 5 months later on, and he said that the end of the world would actually end on October 21st, 2012. But after that event happened, end of the world didn't happen either. He acknowledged that his prophecy had been wrong, and he posted a letter on his ministry's website telling his followers that he had no evidence that the world would end anytime soon, and that he wasn't interested in predicting any more future dates. Shortly after that, though, he suffered a stroke and passed away. The 2012 Maya calendar ending. December 21st, 2012 was a very epic day. It marked the end of the first great cycle of the Maya long count calendar. Now, many misinterpreted this to mean that the world would end because the calendar ended. But this calendar actually tracked time continuously from a date 5,125 years earlier, and the doomsday predictions, because of that, started to pop up everywhere. The end of the world scenarios, including the Earth colliding with an imaginary planet called Nibiru, as well as giant solar flares, planetary alignments, as well as a lot of catastrophic events were to happen and knock the Earth out of alignment with the sun, but none of that happened. And preparations for the end of the world included there being built a modern-day Noah's Ark by a man in China, as well as people were selling survival kits and people quitting their jobs, selling their possessions, and all of that because they thought the world was going to end, but none of that happened. We have the return of Jesus. So in the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verses 29 to 31, as well as other places in the New Testament, the words of Jesus are recorded about 2,000 years ago that he will return in the future to judge the living and judge the dead. Now, of course, this is a core Christian belief that is reflected in the Apostles' Creed, which is a summary of the Christian beliefs. Now, it says, immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. And at the time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory, and he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. We're going to be talking a little bit more about that near the end of this episode, by the way, but the next prophecy at number 9 is the gospel being preached. So in the book of Matthew 24 verses 14, it says, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. By the way, if you don't know, the gospel means the good news. And in this context, it's the good news about Jesus and what he offers in terms of salvation and eternal life. Now, of course, with increasing worldwide availability of TV and the internet, Christians believe that now there's a greater potential for the gospel to be preached to everyone, everywhere on the planet. So pretty much we're living in this prophecy happening right now. There's also a prophecy of false messiahs, and Jesus prophesied in the book of Matthew also that there would be false messiahs that come before his return. So in Matthew 24 verses 23 to 25, we see the following statement. And at that time, if anyone says to you, look, here is the Christ, or there he is, do not believe it. For false Christs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and miracles to deceive even the elect, if that were possible. See, I have told you ahead of time. There's also a mention of an unequaled destruction and a time of suffering. So it's prophesied that yes, this is actually going to be a real time. People are going to be suffering a lot. Now, many people have offered their different interpretations and opinions on this prophecy, and some claim that this has already happened or is currently happening or is still going to happen in the future. Now, some opinions involve claims of widespread destruction and nuclear war, etc. And now Christians do believe, though, that no matter what happens in this world, no matter how bad things get, God is ultimately still in control. And we find in the book of Matthew, again, in chapter 24, verses 21 and 22, it says, for then there will be a great distress unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. Another very interesting prophecy that takes us into the book of Luke of the New Testament is a destruction that will happen in Jerusalem. So in the book of Luke, in chronological order, that is the third gospel, specifically in chapter 21, verses 23 to 24, it says, how dreadful it will be in those days for pregnant women and nursing mothers. There will be great distress in the land and wrath against this people. They will fall by the sword and will be taken as prisoners to all nations. Now Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. So we see here in the Bible that Jesus prophesied that the Gentiles, which is pretty much another word for non-Jews, would actually trample upon Jerusalem until the end of times. And actually about 40 years after Jesus prophesied that, the Romans actually came in, they destroyed Jerusalem and the temple and forced the Jews into exile. And the temple to this day in Jerusalem still has not been rebuilt. Well, at number 5, there's a prophecy of the love of people growing colder. Now in the book of Matthew 24:12, it records this: "And because sinfulness shall abound, the love of many shall grow cold." Now it's not just talking about the followers of the faith, but also people everywhere. No need to elaborate on this one, just look at your local news and you'll see what people are doing in the world. There's also a prophecy coming at number 4 about wars, famines, and earthquakes, and this is what the Bible actually has to say about this. "And you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be great famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows." And you can find that in the book of Matthew chapter 24 verses 6 to 8. And as a matter of fact, a lot of prophecies are in the book of Matthew and the whole New Testament in general. But either way, it can be pretty unsettling thinking about the amount of earthquakes, floods, droughts, fires, famines, plagues that have happened quite frequently actually. Now I did touch on this one earlier, but prophecy number 3 is about false teachers. Now there are many men who will not listen or obey the truth, whatever that truth is. And this prophecy is specifically talking about false teachers. Those people that promote lies to actually deceive people, which is actually their intention. This is not necessarily referring to people who are simply just ignorant, but either way, for whatever reason, people out there are purposely going to promote lies. Prophecy number 2 in this episode is a 7-headed wild beast. Now, this wild beast with 7 heads is introduced in the book of Revelation, which is actually the last book in the Bible. And it actually represents a world political system. Even though nations may agree on a few things, they unite in their determination to actually maintain their authority rather than submitting to another kingdom or nation. Based on popular interpretation, this nation will also join forces to battle against God's army, but this war will result in the nations being completely destroyed. And you can find this in the book of Revelation chapter 16 verses 14 and 16, as well as chapter 19 verses 19 and 20. And the final prophecy that I want to mention in this episode from the Bible is the rapture. Now it's safe to say that most Christians believe in the rapture. However, a smaller amount believe in a secret rapture. How the prophecy of the secret rapture is explained is that it's the first stage that occurs when Jesus Christ comes in the air in secret for his saints to remove them from the earth up to heaven. Now this is called a rapture, and that word rapture comes from the Latin word rapturo, which means to catch away. Now, the belief of the secret rapture is supported by various biblical texts. For example, in the book of Genesis 5 verses 24, we see Enoch, and also in the book of Hebrews 11 and 5, Enoch is mentioned. And also the prophet Elijah in the book of 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 1 and 11. These guys were both raptured up to heaven. Now, most Christians, however, believe that the rapture will not be a secret, and as a matter of fact, they believe that everybody will know when this thing is happening. Those who died holy will come out of their graves, and those who are alive and holy will be caught up in the clouds with Jesus and his angels and taken to heaven, leaving all those people who are unholy dead on the earth for a certain period of time. Fake messiahs. In the book of Matthew chapter 24 verse 5, it said, "Many false messiahs will come claiming that I am Jesus, and they will be able to deceive many." So when we look in the past 50 years, we have heard of almost 1,100 leaders who have claimed that they are Jesus Christ. In Davao City of the Philippines, for example, the people had their own Christ, and the person's name was Pastor Apollo, who claimed to be Jesus incarnate. And this is just one example. Moving on to number 9, let's talk about wars and rumors of wars. Matthew 24 verse 6 to 7 says, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. but you will not be troubled, and this shall pass. Nation will rise against other nations, and kingdom will rise against other kingdoms. Now, as you all know, there have been many different reports and talks and even speculations that, hey, we're on the verge of World War III. Now, just in the past 50 years alone, there have been around, it's an estimated 300 different wars that have happened, and so many more nations now have nuclear powers. So this is what makes this prophecy so scary. The prophecy at number 8 has to do with increasing hunger in the world. Matthew 24 verse 7 says, and there shall be hunger and pestilence. We can only imagine how horrible this would be. No one likes feeling hungry and not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. It's reported that over the next 20 years, almost 90% of the babies born will be born in countries with very little ability to be fed, like how a lot of us experience being fed. There's just so much abundance of food everywhere, and a lot of times it's taken for granted. But from there, we move on to number 7, earthquakes. This prophecy is very scary. In Matthew 24 verse 7 says, and there will be earthquakes in various places. So take a look at this. The prophecy also says that there will be a huge earthquake that will take place on the day of judgment, and that it will shake the earth so badly that everything is going to be destroyed. There have been surveys in the last few years that say that the ratio of earthquakes has increased enormously. There have been more earthquakes in the last 20 years than there have been in the last 100 years. Whoa. Incurable sicknesses comes in at number 6. This prophecy found in Matthew says, and there will be pestilence. Now, it is, I guess, one of the scariest signs of Judgment Day. We recently just went through a global pandemic that caused a huge amount of terror to fill the hearts of people all around the world. Now, on top of that, the prophecy says that this would be so bad that the whole world will come to a stop. So it has many people thinking, are we on the verge of something like this happening? Halfway to number 5, the hate for Christians. This one is also found in Matthew. And by the way, a lot of these prophecies are going to be taken from the book of Matthew, and perhaps in another future episode, we'll elaborate more into other prophecies mentioned in the Bible. But this passage, also taken from Matthew, says, then they will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all other nations for my name's sake. So the prophecy says that those really who follow Jesus will be hated, and this will be a test for them. As evidence, many people who profess to be followers of Jesus can sometimes be accused of hate speech. So you can see that this prophecy says that those who follow Jesus will be hated, and this will be a great test for those people. And a lot of people see that there's evidence for this, because many people who profess to be followers of Jesus can sometimes be accused of hate speech just for voicing their faith. And there are chances that your video or your account on social media could be censored or completely banned, all because you profess to be Christian, Now, moving on to number 4, hate will be common. Matthew 24:10 claims that many will be offended and will betray each other. Now, this verse pretty much makes it clear that people will be full of hatred, and selfishness and hate will be very common. No one will be sincere with other people. And some people look to today's society saying that people are actually spreading more hate. Today's generation, they say, is overly sensitive and can be very hateful towards people. So people fear that this could get even worse. Now, the prophecy number 3 is no love for believers. Let's look at this a little bit more. The book of Matthew 24 verse 12 says, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. So not even just there being no love for believers, but no love for people in general. According to this prophecy, people will not be respectable anymore in society. With every passing day, the world seems to be getting darker. Many people believe that progressive Christianity is actually embracing sin and promoting sin. And the Bible defines sin as breaking or transgressing the law. So if any ideology promotes transgressing or breaking the law, then it's just another fulfillment of this prophecy. Just imagine living in a world with no law. All right, moving on to the prophecy at number 2, quick or gradual end. Matthew 24 verses 14 says, the gospel of the kingdom will be preached all over the world as a witness to all nations. Then this will come to an end. It means that all the technology and everything that we see here in this world, everything's just gonna come to an end. And all these advancements and everything that is achieved will will just halt when everybody hears the gospel. So what's scary about this is that, is it the specific moment right after the gospel is preached to the whole world and everyone hears it, then the end will come right then? Or could it mean sometime after the gospel is preached that the end will come? So not necessarily immediately after. No one really knows when that time is going to be. And finally, at number 1, this one kind of piggybacks off of the prophecy at number 2, the lesson from the fig tree. Jesus had said that his return is going to be near to the time of Judgment Day, and you can look to the fig tree. So in Matthew 24 verses 32 to 33, it says this: "From the fig tree learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts out its leaves, you know that summer is near." And from this verse, Jesus is simply using the budding of the fig tree to illustrate a point about his second coming and the end of the world. It is interpreted by most Christians to mean that just like when spring comes and trees put out new leaves, we know that summer is not far off. And in the same way, we should know that Jesus' return and the end is near, because you can actually see physical signs that it's getting closer. Now, this could give someone the sense that the end is creeping up on them like a beast hiding in the shadows. In any case, according to the Bible, only God knows the exact time